just want to invite you, first of all, I know this is already in your heart, so I just want to give you an opportunity to do it, but Candy got up early, caught a flight, was with our worship team last night to do a little workshop, and then she led us in a prayer meeting last night, then got up again early today to be with us at worship, and then going home to work tomorrow. So would you give a warm thank you to her for the investment that she's made here at Grace Fellowship. And I wanted to just spend some time talking to her and giving you an opportunity to hear her story, because we are, and as many of you know already, we are in the launch of this renewal experience together, where we're asking the Lord to do some renewing in our hearts. And so we kind of started last week with, all right, hupsake, time to go, right? And so now we are 4 weeks going to be talking about what does renewal look like. And today we want to focus on this idea of abiding in Christ. And when we were trying to make the plans for today, I thought, I think there's going to be this divine thing that God's putting together, because this is also a part of your story. But before I get too much into that, tell us a little bit about yourself. So tell us about your family, like what are you doing these days, what's keeping you busy, all that.
Well, first, thank you so much. I love being in Pella, so it was awesome to be. I don't mind the traveling and all that. Was so great. Thank you so much for bringing me in. So I live in Austin, Texas, and I've been married, just had my anniversary for 28 years to the same feller from high school. And he's wonderful. And so I have 3 kids, 2 boys that are 23 and 20, and one's in grad school, one's in college. And then I have a sweet daughter that's 14, and she is adopted way later in our life, and it was such a blessing from the Lord. So we have a wild and crazy family that goes 100 miles an hour most of the time.
I can't imagine.
I know. Imagine that. I know. You don't get that at all, do you?
No.
And so, and I get the wonderful opportunity to work on staff at a church in Austin called Austin Christian Fellowship. It's a wonderful place. I always say God got me in that job kind of Jehovah sneaky, kind of got me around the corner there, getting me into that job when I had really no intention of working for, obviously, a church at the beginning, because I used to do secular music on the road with a big tour bus, 150 shows a year.
No, don't get too far ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going ahead. I'm getting out of there then. Okay. Well, you told me some things, so I don't know how much time we got, and I'm a fast talker, because in my family, if you don't get it in there, you're not going to get it in. So I'll just stop there. Yeah.
So you lead this thing, really cool thing
barn,
at the. Tell us about that.
Yes.
What's that
So
about?
I was telling the worship team about it a little last night. I would love to have them come to Austin if you want to send them. Y'all just saying. But it's a wonderful place. It used to be truly a barn for animals, like back in the day. It's at the highest point of Austin, Texas. There's some sweet things about this barn, but after COVID, our church campuses merged into the big, the big campus, and we all became one church. So that was definitely new, but we needed a space because we have a group of intercessors that's 75 to 100 that pray every day, and different online, in person. So we needed a space bigger for them, and this little barn that had kind of been a storage unit, like, hey, y'all can use that. And so a whole lot of paint and a whole lot of like repurposed stuff later.
So good.
It's so awesome, and I call it a little roadhouse for Jesus. So we have literally prayer every day there, worship every day there, Wednesday night worship every single week, and I get the chance to bring in people that do worship from all over the city. So it's just this wonderful place that people come and meet and worship the Lord and pray for each other and petition heaven, and we just see beautiful miracles there. So I get to be a part of that. And
they've prayed for me many a time.
Yes.
In fact, we love
praying for Pete.
Yeah, so we had a group that I've been kind of doing this cancer journey with, that came to visit us in Austin. And so I think we're 6 of us, and that whole group of intercessors got around us and just prayed heaven down. And it's a very memorable experience. It's such a beautiful thing. I try and get there as often as I can when I'm in town. All right, so now it might appear from people like hearing your story, and this is where I want to kind of go back a little bit. Yeah, we're going to go back a little bit.
Put your seatbelt on.
You hear her story, and you hear her sing, and she's talking all this about Jesus, and it's all awesome and good. But there's another part to the story. So way back, let's go about 10 years back. You already alluded to it. You had your own tour bus. You were playing all these places. Iowa State Fair even, right? Who'd you open
It's
for?
one of my favorites of all. Darius Rucker, Big and Rich, all those.
Yeah. So she, it was a big deal. And she was also a believer, but there were some things missing. And I want you to talk a little bit about that. And then maybe even if you feel like you can be vulnerable enough to do this, Like, what led to that? Like, you grew up in the church, right? I mean, you were a good Christian girl. We worked together before this at Woodcrest. And so you go on the road, you have all these shows, you're a big deal, and then you start to notice some things kind of drifting a bit. Talk about that.
It's a perfect word, drifting. That's what I call it, because I grew up in church, knew all the right words to say, right the stuff to say. Candy, sing this song, go sing that song. Okay. And, I was sharing that I never understood that worship was not about executing a song or performing it well when I was growing up. Somehow I missed that. And my grandmothers were wonderful. They poured into me. They raised me and my sister. And my grandmother is the reason I have this beautiful creative gift, because she really fostered that in me. But I knew all the right stuff, but I didn't have the relationship with the Father, and I didn't know that feeling of being a daughter of the King and like really being enough, and my identity was in Him, not in trying to get you to know who I was, like, let me put my name on the bus if you don't know me. Like, seriously, it was ridiculous, y'all. My feeling of worth came from what you said. Like, did you say I did a good job? Okay, well, I must be okay. And the more that I did that, the more I drifted into that space of feeling like all my value and identity came from what someone else down here said. I just kept drifting and kind of modifying and like just going along with things. And I was like, nah, I'm really not, this song doesn't really say anything about who I am, but I'll do it because it might help me get known. So my time was spent making my name great, not making the Lord's name great. And that's a pretty endless road to go on with not a lot of real value or joy. So the drift was slow, super subtle and slow too, because you get a lot of people around you that you feel like, they're your people, but were they really your people? Because they really weren't keeping me accountable and honest, and like, is this really what your heart says to do? Is this really who you are? And so I kind of surrounded myself with those people. I'll forward it on down the road. Yeah. And what was amazing is, I had a lot of addiction history since I was a little kid. I didn't even recognize it until later. But about 10 years ago, I got to a point, we'd moved out to Texas, and God was so kind to me. I just keep saying He's so kind and gentle with us when we finally go, okay. He's so kind. He will walk through anything with us. But, I had gotten to the point after a kid struggling with food and not eating and all these things and workaholicism and all these isms that I got to a point where I could not control drinking anymore. And that was a strange thing because I'd had no problem before, and then all of a sudden just crossed some line, some time I missed. And, it became a thing that I could no longer control. So I was pretty scared about it because I didn't know anyone I could tell the truth to, and I was living this dual life. Like, you saw this shiny bus and my name on it and all this stuff, and it looks great. And there were a lot of beautiful things that happened, even during that time. That's how good God is. He will give you good things, even in those times. So I just can't believe His overwhelming grace. But then the Lord woke me up one morning, and I feel like it was like radical. And I was like, okay, Lord, if you are real, you've got to show up today. Like, I can't live like this anymore. I am so depressed. I feel so just out of hope. And literally during that prayer, I just knew exactly what I needed to do. Got into 12-step program, recovery, and you would not want to probably be my friend back then. I'm just going to say 10 years ago, you don't know if you would. I certainly would have been here. But because I was doing this as a performance and doing, my relationship with God was not connected to that. So it was kind of worthless. And so that day, everything in my life started to turn a corner. And it was not easy. It was definitely hard. But God was so kind because then He puts me in these, just slowly walk me through to a new place that I could have never imagined would be so fulfilling and kind and good. And then the feeling of making His name great is an explosion in your heart compared to trying to like, hey, do you know who I am? Hey, can I keep scratching to try to get to this top level of something that was pretty worthless because all I was trying to do it for was to gain value in myself when it only came from one source, and that is the Father, and that's that relationship. So abiding is a wonderful topic today because that is a daily walk. And I had to learn how to do that from people that knew and were wise and beautiful around me. And God just sent those people in once I started praying for that. Like, Lord, can you just please send me some wise women in my life? And boy, did he ever do it.
So yeah, and I want to tap on into that because, people hear stories like this and they're like, oh, that's so awesome that, the Lord helped you to come to this realization. But, maybe some of us here, we're thinking, okay, well, I know people who have been in similar places and they don't seem to have that same story, or they can't seem to make the turnaround, or they still struggle with addiction and depression and so on. So obviously there's still struggles. We've been honest enough to talk about that. But what are some of the key things that you've learned in this journey that you feel like are transferable to anyone who's kind of in a similar place where they're realizing, hey, I've given lip service to my journey with God. I need to go to another level. I need to be deeper. I need to get renewed. What would you say some of the transferable principles are there?
That's an awesome question, and I would have loved to have been in a service like this back then, 10 years ago, because I didn't really know where to go. And so what I would say first is, it's always first a relationship with him. So I didn't know how to do that, and I'm just like, okay, what do I do? And so I met this wonderful lady first, and she gave me some prayers to really just start my day with intentionally, and they were based in the Word. Because I never really read the Bible much, y'all. I grew up in church, but I couldn't tell you verses, struggled with dyslexia as a kid. I couldn't memorize things. And so I would learn them through songs sometimes, but having the Word richly in our heart is gold, seriously, because you can call it up. You can call it up when you're in any situation and you do not give me a spirit of fear, give me power, love, and sound mind. Those ones to just call on. That was huge. So she gave me this list. So I would say first off is that relationship with God is number one. If you can have that connecting time and that time to be with him in the morning, especially in the morning for me, because my mind starts going 100 miles an hour. And life happens, and nothing's perfect in my family, y'all. We've had some serious struggles the last 3 years that have probably been the hardest in our life, even with sobriety and even with a great marriage. The hits keep coming, but that's what 1 Peter 4:12 tells us is, hey, friends, don't be surprised at the fire arrows, consider it joy. And he told us this would happen here. So what do? We get close to the Lord. Number two, we get close to people that can raise us up, encourage us, that iron sharpening iron. And that's what he started bringing me is I said, could you send me a spiritual mom? Because I don't really... In Austin, I didn't really have someone that I could reach out to that was a wise woman to say, hey, what do I do in this situation? And he sent me one a year later that was still one of the most valuable women in my life. So what he started doing is just making this beautiful community and village of people that could speak into me and really tell me my value of reminding me who God says I am. And then when things come up in my life, I consult them and say, what is God saying to you about this? But their number one question all the time to me is, Candy, what is God saying about this right now? So anything I'm doing, I cannot run out the door and decide what Candy thinks is a good idea, because it's not. It's not. I have proved that well. So those people, they pray for me, and they pray so much, with intention and love for me. So that community is huge. The relationship with the Lord is always number one. And the third thing is I would say, you have to make changes, even if they're hard. Being vulnerable with people is hard. Telling them the truth is hard. And if you don't have people in your life that you feel like you can be that with, they may not be the people that are your close people, for your walk further on out the road. And I had to have some people that I was no longer, really invested in as much, because they weren't really wanting that path. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so there's some hard decisions, there's some uncomfortable pieces of it, but really abiding is daily, every day, and remembering, that's my favorite new tattoo if I could get one, remember how good God is. I can remember and recall what he has done any day that I feel like not doing any of this stuff, or complaining, or getting in that spot of being just lethargic with it.
Yeah.
So
awesome. Yeah. All right, before we give you an opportunity to sing another song about what we just talked about, I want to kind of take a little turn because this kind of came up yesterday as we were talking on the way in, where I was telling you kind of where we are as a church, and we've had a bit of a rough patch, over the last number of years, and we're now in this process of saying, okay, Lord, what is it you have for us? What does the renewal look like, and all that? And then you told me a story about a church that you're familiar with, family member, that was sounding like a very similar situation, and a couple things happened that provided a kind of a new launch for them. Would you? Because I think that would be an encouragement to us to hear.
Yeah, you bet. And I mean, tell you, like, your whole community is beautiful here, y'all. I just want to encourage you on that. It's not like that everywhere. So I just want to give you a hug on your heart from the Lord. Like, what you have done and what you have invested here matters. It matters to your community. And, you know, my pastor says sometimes, like, you know, we might not be the newest, shiniest, brightest, but we're not supposed to be. We are supposed to keep plowing the field that he gave us to plow. You know, we have our own field that we do. So what I will say is, so a family member had this church, and it was after COVID, and the church literally almost shut down completely, like all the way. So they had a remnant left of people, and they were really, you know, loved the church, and it had just been through a lot. But what was amazing is that the Lord knew something was still for that community, and brought a pastor with a pastor and wife team, man and woman, they came in, vibrant younger couple with kids, and came into that community and like brought this new beautiful life for the next season of this church. And it has been one of the most amazing things, not only for that church, but for the whole city. And the city's much smaller than here, y'all, way smaller. And there's a lot of churches that are big in that city. But they brought in this love to that community, and the community was what mattered. If the community and remnant had not loved that church so much, it would have never worked to just bring somebody in. But they loved the church, and they had a heart for the church, and they were able to partner with that new pastor and his wife, who's the worship leader, and they have just, it's been unbelievable to see it. It makes me cry every time I'm there because I'm like, it's just so beautiful what they're doing, and really revitalizing what that place is.